a conductive wire, and you were so electric. I had no say when you came so near, and just passed right through me.
Hey everyone, welcome to Geekdom is Back. I'm your host, Deanna Chapman, which is something I realize I have not been telling anyone, so they're probably just like, who is this person talking? We always know who she's talking to. But today we are talking about Detective Pikachu with Mitchell McDonald. Mitchell, how are you doing today?
I'm doing just peachy. I'm excited to talk about this movie.
Before we dive into the movie, though, I do want to talk a little bit about our experience with Pokemon in general, because this was something I was really into as a kid. I had the trading cards, I watched the show on TV, I had the Game Boy games, although I stopped buying the Game Boy games, I want to say, after the Crystal edition. So I don't have, Ruby or any of the ones that introduced new Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like my nostalgia is mostly with the older groups of Pokemon, the ones you had in Red, Yellow, and Blue, and then you had the Gold, Silver, and Crystal, and that's kind of it. After that, I'm like, what are all of these Pokemon? There's so many of them. So even the ones in, the Gold and Silver and Crystal editions, I'm like, yeah, I'm not as familiar with those as I am with the core group, because the show was based off of that core group.
Yeah.
And the trading cards were mostly those ones when I was playing. I don't think I have any trading cards of the newer Pokemon. And funny enough, this movie gave out Pokemon cards.
Yep.
And when I got to AMC, they were like, oh, do you want the Pokemon cards? I was like, yes, please. Yes, I do. And I thought that was sort of a fun thing to go along with the movie, because you have some older Pokemon on the cards and you have some newer ones. And I happened to get Detective Pikachu and Psyduck.
Oh, nice.
So I was like, yes, this is perfect. And they have a couple versions of those two because they're in the movie more than the other Pokemon. Yeah. So I thought that was just a fun little thing. But what has your experience been like with Pokemon through the years?
Oh, God, where to start? I think, God, I'm pretty sure that Pokemon has been like one of the most, or if not the most, like integral piece of like pop culture media of my life, I think, just in terms of like how long and how much time I've spent with it as a property. I can very clearly remember my dad taking me to the Huntington Beach Mall some Tuesday when it came out, when Pokemon Red came out. And I remember like going to, I think it was probably like the KB toy store, and buying an Indigo Game Boy Color and Pokemon Red version. And from then on, it's been something I've been in and out of love with for virtually my entire life. I think I played every game. I played at least like one version or color of every game. I played like Silver when it came out. I think I also had Crystal. I remember getting Ruby and a Game Boy Advance to play it. I remember like staying up late at night playing Ruby in my room when I was like in probably like third or fourth grade. I remember playing, I had Diamond and Pearl, or I think I had Diamond on my DS. And then I think I skipped the black and white versions, because those were, I think, like when it was sort of, I think I was in high school during those years. And that was when I was sort of like not as into it, because, you're in high school, you get into different stuff. But I think I came back because I think either in like my senior year of high school or my first year of college, we went to Hawaii, and I bought a new 3DS to play. What was it? X version.
Okay.
And then I also played Moon when Sun and Moon came out too. And I also I remember having like a stuffed Pikachu that I brought everywhere when I was really little. I went to, when they were doing this thing when it first came out with like Burger King, where they had like hundreds of different toys, and you collected like these cardboard cards, and you could also collect these like Pokeballs that had like these golden foil like tablet cards in them that you got from Burger King. I also had like the trading cards, although I don't think I ever played the game. I think I just collected them. I remember having them. God, I saw the movies in theaters. I remember I saw the first 4 anime movies in theaters, which is fun because they gave away the trading cards with those, so it's kind of like a fun throwback to that. I remember getting the cards from those, and so yeah, that's like a cool thing that they decided to do. I'm very happy that they chose to do that for the new movie. With that, I definitely watched the show on and off from when I was little, and played other countless other games. And it was like probably the first video game I think I ever played. Actually, now that I think about it, and definitely like they say that Pokemon is like the most successful like franchise of all time in terms of like its crossover appeal between video games to TV to movies to the trading card game to and then we can get into this too, Pokemon Go a couple
Yeah.
years ago. Oh God. Yeah, when Pokemon Go came out, it was right after I had finished college. Was living with my parents. I didn't have a job, and I would just play it nonstop. Virtually, we lived in Corona Del Mar, and I would just like every day I would take like a long walk, like either to Fashion Island, which is like this outdoor mall by my house, or to the beach, and there would be just so many Pokemon just everywhere to catch, and there would be so many other people out there doing it, and it was just this amazing uh time for like from like July 2016 until whenever. I feel like a large drop off happened. I feel like I stopped in like December. Well, I know I stopped in December because I recently started playing it again, and it told me when I stopped. So, but yeah, I've been playing it again, so now it's just like I'm back in, baby. I'm completely back.
Yeah, that would probably have been my last experience with Pokemon too, but it didn't seem like there were as many people playing it like in my neighborhood or anything like that, so it didn't last quite as long for me.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes if my mom and I were going somewhere, I would have her drive so I could like try and catch Pokemon in the
Oh,
car
nice.
while we were driving.
Absolutely.
So it was one of those things where I was like, yeah, unless you have like a pretty populated area where a lot of people are
Mm,
playing it, it's
yeah.
not quite as fun. I was like, yeah, the closest Pokemon is like down the street, around the corner, and I'm not doing that. So
Yeah.
I didn't have quite as much fun with it as some people did, but it was still something that I wanted to check out because I was curious. Because what I've kind of always wanted is just one of the Pokemon games on my iPhone.
Mm,
And there are ways to do that, but it's complicated and you can't just, like go pay Nintendo for one of the
yeah.
games on your iPhone, which I've always thought was a little weird, but I recently went on a kick. I want to say it was last year, so it wasn't like super recently, but I found my Game Boy Advance SP, and that's the
Yeah.
last one I owned. For
Yeah.
whatever reason, I didn't buy any of the Game Boy Advance games though, like Ruby or anything like that. So it
Uh-huh.
was just one of those things where I was trying to play the old games,
Hmm.
but it's to the point where it like won't save my progress. I don't know if
Oh.
it's something wrong with the game cartridges or with the Game Boy Advance SP itself, because that is, I don't even know how old that is at this
Ancient
point.
tech.
But it's one of those things where I was just like, I really want to play this and I don't know why. And now that
Mm,
the movie is out, I was like, I really want to get back into this again, but I have no way to save my progress on
oh,
anything.
that's rough.
So I was just like, oh well, it's fine. The movie was really fun nostalgia for me. And why don't we go ahead and dive into Detective Pikachu and what that's all about? Because there is a backstory to it. It's not just like, hey, here's some Pokemon
Hmm.
and we're going to leave you with that. And it's actually kind of different from the show and the trading card game and everything like that, where you're basically battling your Pokemon. In this world, the Pokemon coexist with the people, and basically every person seems to have a Pokemon except for the main character, Tim, who is like, nah, that's not really for me. And then he finds this Pikachu rummaging around his father's apartment
Hmm.
because he thinks his father is dead. And there's a twist later that we are definitely going to spoil.
Hmm.
So just go see it if you haven't yet.
For sure.
And it wasn't, the most powerful story behind the movie or anything like that, but it was one where I was like, okay, this is cool. They gave us an actual story to follow, and it's not just going to be all nostalgia all the time.
Yeah.
There's something you actually have to pay attention to here, and, there's a villain, so to speak. But I did like the fact that they focused on showing us Pikachu. You had Psyduck, Charizard, Gengar, you had quite a few Charmanders and Squirtles popping up here and there, Bulbasaur. So, really that core group that I had mentioned earlier of the original Pokemon. You have Mewtwo, which, is a huge deal for anyone who
Yeah,
has played the original games. And
for sure.
there are some newer ones that pop up. I think Snubble was the one that the lieutenant had.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there were some I just didn't recognize. There were definitely some I didn't recognize, actually. I'll take that back.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, they got their little appearances. So they blended it enough to where it's great for those who played the game from the beginning, but then anyone who might not have had the chance to do that would also have some Pokemon that they recognized. And I don't know about you, but I actually didn't have too many kids in my screening, which I thought was, one, funny, and two, a little weird because it's a Pokemon movie. But I went during the day, during the week. So, I felt like it was a lot of people either my age or slightly older who were in my showing. And I think that just goes to show how wide of an audience Pokemon still has.
Yeah, it's okay. That was a lot. I don't really know where to jump in there, but
Sorry.
I went at like 2:30 on Wednesday, and it was definitely mostly like people, I'd say around my age-ish, which is very interesting. It's funny because like you're talking about it as like a nostalgia thing, and for me, I feel like it is not really nostalgic, as in it's more just something that I've been into to varying degrees throughout my life, which might make me kind of lame. But no, I do think that it's casting an interesting balance between this is ostensibly a kids movie, but it also is definitely appealing to people who have been fans of this franchise and wanting to see something like this for several years. So yeah, just in that, I think that I don't know. I gotta preface this with saying that like I'm pretty much completely in the bag for any sort of thing like this. Like leading up to this, it was like my one of my most anticipated movies of the year, just because of the designs of the Pokemon, the look of the world, just everything about that. I was like completely sold. And then like when it starts and you get Mewtwo, I was just like, oh yeah, I am completely in on this. This is yeah, I could not be more in the bag for this. But I think the story, it's really interesting that they chose to do Rhyme City, which is like a place kind of devoid of catching Pokemon,
Right.
of battling Pokemon, which people would probably say are the main parts of Pokemon. But I think this movie was really focused on more building like a harmonious like world for Pokemon to exist in before so we kind of can get used to the world, get used to how these characters interact, what the look and feel of this place is before we then make them kill each other. Because yeah, I just think that the world building in this movie is really incredible. From like from in the games, when you entered every different city kind of had different rules and stuff, and you get that here when he's riding the train and they play the little video telling you, okay, this is what this place's deal is. And you're like, oh, okay, well, there's no Pokemon battling here. That's weird. But it's so cool to just have like this really neat city where you just have all these Pokemon and people living in harmony. And you get a little bit of like the Pokemon working like jobs and doing different stuff. Like you have like the Growliths and the Arcanines at the police station. You have like Machamp is directing traffic. You have Charmander is like cooking stuff. There's that, I forget what, I think Octillery, there's like an octopus when he's like walking down that like food street is like preparing food. I don't know. But yeah, I think I think just the world building in this movie was just, I was completely on board. I thought it was totally spot on. I loved the use of these different Pokemon in this world. I also loved how they were animated. I loved that some of them had like hard scaly stuff. Like Charizard had like scales and like he looked like hard and tough, and Pikachu had like soft fur, and so Psyduck had feathers, Like I think that the level of thought that they put into really like bringing the Pokemon that they choose to bring to life was absolutely incredible, and it really sold me on it. Even if I feel like the plot was very much using like this kind of like noir for kids pastiche of
Yeah.
like a lot of the characters were like archetypes, and it's like needlessly they say at one point that it's like needlessly convoluted, which is like also like kind of on purpose. Um, and like having these like crazy twists and turns, and like a lot of like there was some gray area and stuff of that nature, I think. And then you have like when what's her face, is her name Lucy in the is her name Lucy?
Yes.
Yeah, when she comes in, she's like, what do you know, see, like I've got all this information, I gotta get it out of you. And she's like kind of doing like the kind of trope of like a news reporter, and she's sort of trying to do that. And then you have like the mysterious like figure, which is Chris Gear from, by the way, Chris Gear, who plays like the quote unquote villain in this movie, is from You're the Worst, and that's like one of my favorite shows, and it's so funny to see him in this movie, like yelling at children and stuff, because he plays like a jerk on that show, and it's great to see him here. And then of course we haven't even talked about like Ryan Reynolds, obviously is the voice of Pikachu for some reason. Actually, the reason is I read in interviews and stuff that they had finished like designing Pikachu, and they knew that they wanted like a voice for it, which I think like a year or two ago they said that it might be like they were shopping like Danny DeVito to be the voice of Pikachu, which would make for a very different movie.
Yeah, very, very different.
What I'm guessing happened was that they had Pikachu, and they were just kind of like being like, okay, well, how does he sound with this voice? And how does he sound with that voice? And how does he sound with Danny DeVito's voice? And how does he sound with Deadpool's voice? And when they landed on that one, they must have been like, oh my gosh, that's perfect. That's the one. So
yeah. There were some familiar faces in this and voices in Ryan Reynolds' case for, a good chunk of the movie. And then you have random appearances by like Rita Ora and Diplo. And I'm just like, okay.
That was strange. That was very strange. He's got to make the beats for the Loudred to play when they're doing underground Pokemon fighting.
Yeah, it was just a fun little thing to catch on to. And I don't think they were trying to blow anyone away with the casting. I think Ryan Reynolds really was the crux of that for them. It's
Absolutely.
like, hey, this guy you already know and probably love from Deadpool is voicing Detective Pikachu. So that, along with just the fact that it's Pokemon IP, probably got a lot of people our age out to this movie. Saying that, Pikachu and Deadpool are played by the same person might not do much for smaller children, because hopefully they haven't seen Deadpool. So you just have that sort of factor where for us that's a fun fact. It's like, okay, this is pretty cool, I like this decision. And they do keep it very PG with this movie. I mean, it's kind of a dark story behind it, but at the same time, they're not like showing you anything super gory, or, they're not having Pokemon die left and right or whatever.
No.
I mean, although you have Pikachu's moment where he's injured, so there is that, and it's a little sad, but he's fine.
He's fine. Pokemon have the games, they never really. I think they can die. Like there are ghost Pokemon, which means that ostensibly they died, right? I don't know. But anyway, I think it's a really interesting choice that they went for a movie that does not involve like. I mean, there's like obviously like a big set piece scene where they do go to like a Pokemon battle, and it's like an underground, like kind of like
illegal.
It kind of reminded me of like that part in the first Spider-Man movie.
Okay.
Where he goes to the fight, and he's fights what's that Randy Savage, right? Does he fight like Macho Man Randy Savage? I think
it's something like that. But yeah, it's definitely part of Spider-Man's backstory where he goes and just starts fighting to make money instead of using his abilities for good, and that starts everything with the whole Uncle Ben thing, which we don't need to go over in this episode.
No, but anyone who's listening to this already knows that. But I thought that a lot of the set pieces in this really worked for me. I thought that part was really fun. I liked when you saw Blastoise fighting Gengar. I thought the Gengar design was really weird, and when he was doing like double team and he made all the clones of himself, that was so sick. And then of course you got Charizard goes crazy and is like trying to eat Pikachu, and but then I really like the set piece where they go to the lab and then the Greninja break out, and they're like chasing them around, throwing like their big water shurikens at them, and then they are caught in this like crazy earthquake that turns out to be Torterra, which is this giant Pokemon that has a basically like a globe on its back, like different biomes, like mountains and trees and stuff. I thought that was such a cool use of those two Pokemon that I really that's like the shit that I like. That's like I was like, yeah, this is that good shit. This is what I want to see, and I'm glad that they waited so long that they could do that the animation and the technology were at the point where they could do this sort of right, and they could make this world seem very believable and like make sense. And I hope they make like 10 more of these movies. I know they already have two more in development. They have one that's based more traditionally around like the original games, the red and blue version, I'm told. And then they also have a Mewtwo movie in development. Both of which are going to be live action. And I think this movie made enough. It didn't beat Avengers, obviously, on its first weekend, but I think it like did pretty well at the box office to warrant more of those. And I just think that the world itself is going to lend itself to a lot more stories now that they have the hard part out of the way, which is like establishing like this is the deal. It's also funny that they like spend a little time like explaining some of the stuff, but like there's a scene in this movie that has like Ditto, and if you don't know what Ditto is, you're gonna be like, what the fuck is happening? Like, if you didn't know what a Ditto was, I guess you just kind of had to. There's a lot of parts that if you don't know Pokemon as a franchise, I think you kind of just have to go with, which I can't really relate to because it is baked into my DNA. Like it's literally part of my brain because there was an article going around like last week or two that said that if you grew up with the Pokemon franchise, you have an area of your brain devoted specifically to the names and designs of these characters, which I definitely feel like I do.
Yeah, and going back quickly to what it made, right now it's sitting at around 178 million worldwide, which for something that came out while Endgame is still in theaters is pretty good. You know, I definitely agree with you that I think there are going to be plenty more movies to come from this franchise. I don't think it'll be anything quite like the MCU where everything's tied together. I think they could do more movies like this where they tell a story from beginning to end, and that's sort of it for this one. You know, who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see Ash and, you know, these people we're familiar with too from the games. You know, you have Misty, Brock, all these people, Gary. I don't know. I don't think I have as much of my brain dedicated to remembering names as you do, but
probably good. It's probably a good thing.
But I remember enough to, you know, sort of continue to get excited about this. And if they end up going in the direction of using some of the newer Pokemon for, you know, the majority of a few movies or something like that, maybe those might not interest me as much, but at the same time I could also see them convincing me to go buy a Nintendo 3DS or whatever the new one is, Nintendo Switch, and just playing more Pokemon games because that kind of sounds fun right now. But
yeah, there's a new version coming out. I think it's called Sword and Shield. It's coming out on the Switch in the fall, and that's gonna be the one that gets me, I think, because I don't have a Switch yet.
I had no idea that there was a Detective Pikachu game either.
Yeah, that's what this is based on.
So that makes total sense that this movie came from that game. And I think the only other Pokemon game I had was like the Game Boy trading card game.
Oh, okay.
So it's like you would play the trading card game on your Game Boy. I don't know. It was one of the more unique things I think they did at the time with Pokemon. But I think, you know, visually, this movie looked pretty good too. Yeah. I think, you know, some people might not like every single Pokemon they saw on screen, but whatever. I thought they were all good.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, just seeing Pikachu come to life in that way, I was like, can we have more of this, please?
Absolutely. Yes.
I don't know what they do now because they kicked it off with Ryan Reynolds voicing Pikachu. And it's like, are you going to top that? You know, are you going to have another Pikachu that talks in his voice? Or, you know,
it's definitely a self-contained story that very much gets resolved. Like, gets absolutely resolved by the end of it, and it's like that's that. I mean, they could maybe write themselves into a way that lends itself to like a sequel, but I think the franchise is really going to be just telling different types of stories in this world. Now
Yeah.
that they have like the this, whether it's this city or these character designs, they can just kind of expand and branch off of that. It is a really weird, when you think about it, it is a very strange choice that they chose to go with this property and tell this story first, to kick off this franchise, sort of. It's very strange, but maybe they just wanted to go like a less violent route. They wanted to give people a movie that doesn't hinge on like fighting and stuff before they really go into that, because that would be that's like most of what the games and the anime and stuff of that nature were, and maybe they wanted to go to something a little bit more child friendly here. But I don't know. Yeah, visually, this movie works on me for every level. I think, like from even outside of the just the Pokemon integration and how they're designed and how they are worked into the world. I really liked how it was shot. I liked the color scheme. I liked the like kitty, like neon noir kind of look. I liked it was almost like a little bit Blade Runner-y. Is something I've seen people comparing it to, which I think is fairly apt. Which is tight to have a kids movie that's like that. And then yeah, just the different places that we go with this movie, I thought were all really neat. To have like the forest where there's like all these different Pokemon walking around and flying around to the little towns and stuff, really all worked. I think the story is like a little bit like rote, but like it's a kids movie, and it's like, dude, that's not really what you're here for. You're here for this, like, you're here to have an adventure with Pokemon and to get introduced to this world. And I think that as far as that goes, it is very entertaining and very fun. And I, again, can't really speak for somebody who doesn't have Pokemon baked into their brain, but I had a great time with it. I'm probably going to watch it a lot more. I do think there aren't a ton. The conversation people have been kind of trying to drive this towards is this the best video game movie ever made? Which I would say maybe. I don't know. I would say maybe this, or like movies directly based on video games. I would say this or the Rampage movie that came out last year were both like really good adaptations of video games. This one has better world building. That one is like more fun and stupider and crazier. And I don't know if you saw that, but
I did not.
yeah, I didn't see the Tomb Raider movie. People said it was all right, but yeah, it's been a pretty, I think, pretty rough time to make video game. It's hard to make video game movies because I think maybe that was why they opted to go with like a less known story here, is because in video games you're playing this character, so you have control of them, you're choosing what they do, you're going through this game. But in movies you don't have control, you're watching somebody. It's like watching somebody else play a video game when you base a movie off a video game. So I think maybe that was part of why they decided to go with this Detective Pikachu story, which is more of like when you play Pokemon, it's like the fun of it is you get to catch and you get to build your own team and you form like this bond with them. You form relationships with your Pokemon. You grow to love them. You learn like their personalities. You do different stuff with them, and you have this team that's all yours. I think that would be maybe harder to make a game out of. That would be, or a movie out of. That would be like really enticing and really like you'd be automatically on board for it. Is because, well, I'm just watching somebody else play this game and have their stuff, and I don't know if that is as open and shut as this movie's story is, which is very much a like a caper, like a mystery, a mystery in quotes. And I think maybe it lent itself more to like the traditional like narrative structure than maybe a Pokemon like Red and Blue or Gold and Silver game movie would. And so maybe that's why. I don't know.
Yeah, looking at the list of video game adaptations that have done well on Box Office Mojo, it's kind of like you have 3 franchises that stand out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 4, I guess. You have Tomb Raider, Mortal Kombat, Pokemon, and the Resident Evil movies. And
Yeah.
honestly, I have seen 1 or 2 of the Tomb Raider movies back when it was Angelina Jolie.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the new one or anything like that. So video game movies aren't really something that wind up on my radar most of the time, I would say. And, you know, Tomb Raider, according to this list, holds the top spot, the one from 2001.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the Angry Birds movie, which no, thank you. I didn't go see that. And Rampage is number 3. So, you know, Detective Pikachu's already at number 7 on the list as far as, you know, how well these video game adaptations are going. And given that it recently came out, I imagine it'll still make some more money. And I think these are going based off of domestic numbers and is doing really well, you know, in foreign territories. So it's definitely something that, while, you know, the US isn't going to be necessarily the major market for Pokemon because it's so popular everywhere else too, it's one of those things where, you know, at this point, Avengers is the same way. You know, the US is only so big in comparison to literally everywhere else that, you know,
especially China, yeah.
Avengers is doing gangbusters overseas. You know, it's made $2.5 billion already.
Oh.
And it's still taking the top spots on certain days. You know, I think on Wednesday, that was the most recent day, they had the numbers for Endgame topped Detective Pikachu. And one has been out slightly longer than the other. So, you know, it was close, but those two movies are going to be making more money for at least the next few weeks, I would imagine. And that's really great for them because then it'll just fuel the next however many movies they end up wanting to do. And clearly you and I will both be going to them, you know, like no matter what they kind of do, if it's more stories like this or, you know, they're actually going out and doing the Pokemon battles and everything like that. I am looking forward to what they do next. But why don't we talk about the little twist at the end there? Because Mewtwo can do things that I didn't know Mewtwo could do. So I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, I don't really know what that Pokemon is actually capable of, so we'll just go with it. And he basically put Tim's dad into Pikachu. So Tim's dad is Ryan Reynolds, basically, you know. And it was just something I wasn't expecting at the end of the movie. I was like, oh, wow, they actually did something I did not see coming.
Yeah, that was I knew it was going to be something about like having to do with his dad, whether it was like his soul was in the Pikachu or whatever. I didn't realize that they would like actually have Ryan Reynolds like show up.
Yeah, same.
I was a little bit caught off guard there.
I was like, oh, they made him actually come to work.
Yeah, like, I mean, I guess it makes sense, but it kind of leaves the plot hole of like, shouldn't he recognize his dad's voice? But it's fine. I think he was supposed to be like really young when he was interacting with his dad, so I'll give it to them. It's fine. But yeah, I thought that it was interesting for them to go with actually this kind of twist. It's actually just been about their relationship, but I think it's more about kind of finding like reconnecting with people and having a person that you can trust as your partner, because they keep using the word partner in this movie, because it's like, not your Pokemon don't belong to you, they're your partners, because we live together in the city. It's all about partnership. And I think it's I thought it was there's a really good movie podcast called Blank Check that's like one of my favorite movie podcasts, and they actually had two of the writers of this movie on. And if you've listened to this podcast, I highly, highly recommend you go seek out their newest episode, which is with the Detective Pikachu writers. They give a lot of very insider info on like what it was like to write this movie and to make this movie, and just how the Pokemon company sort of approached them and told them how they were going to do this, and how they were the process of making it. They would be like, okay, well, this scene's going to happen, so write this scene. And they'd be like, okay, which I don't know if that's the correct way to write a movie, but it works. Yeah, I think the climax, the ending of this movie is really cool, when you have like the parade happening and Pikachu and Mewtwo are like flying around fighting each other, like bouncing off the like balloons, which are like these 2D sort of designs of these characters that you knew from like their history, like from like the video games and from the anime, more stylized balloon versions of these characters. And then you had juxtaposed with all the other Pokemon in the world. I thought that was a really neat choice that they made, to like have those different designs being on display at the same time, and then it still worked. And I actually liked how it was shot, which is kind of surprising, because this director has only done like a handful of like Jack Black comedies. Like his last movie was Goosebumps, the Goosebumps movie.
Okay.
Which is pretty wild. But Yeah, I thought the story did its job. I think that a lot of Ryan Reynolds' shtick was pretty good here. There were some bits that got me when they're like in that massive earthquake part and Pikachu's yelling about climate change. That really got me. Um, but yeah, I'm really excited to see where this franchise goes. I'm probably going to watch this a couple more times, hopefully, while it's in theaters. I don't know. It seems this summer is like about to like pop off, whereas there's going to be like a big movie like every week from here on out. I was looking down the calendar and it's frankly exhausting. Most of them are Disney.
Yeah, and we're recording this the day that John Wick 3 comes out. So basically starting with, Endgame, it's just like one
Yeah,
after the other. And, I'm fine with it because my AMC A-list will get a lot of use these next few months.
hell yeah, baby. I saw John Wick last night, by the way. It kicks a lot of ass. It's really
Wonderful.
you should check it out. Yeah, I saw it in IMAX. It was tight. But yeah,
Nice.
there's a lot going on. And okay, so is now a good time for us to dive into the second hour of this podcast where we're going to talk about Carly Rae Jepsen? No? Okay. Well, that's your loss.
One thing I do want to say about the Detective Pikachu story, though, is the fact that it didn't need to be a complicated story. In some ways, it was with the little twist there at the end. You're like, oh, okay, that's a thing I was not expecting. I was kind of just expecting his dad to live on in Pikachu, which,
Mm,
would have left the door open for
sequel.
Ryan Reynolds to come back and voice Pikachu because now, as far as I know, all we really understand is that Pikachu is back to saying Pika Pika,
Yep.
and that's it. And
Uh-huh.
you can't really have Ryan Reynolds doing that for,
Yeah, I mean,
ever. I mean, I guess you could. It works with Groot. So, who knows?
true. Yeah, I don't know. I would feel very strange if they like had to like put him back in the Pikachu somehow. Yeah, I don't really know how that will work. But I mean, honestly, like I'm fine with it just being one movie of that. Like,
Yeah.
because we already have the Deadpool movies, which are gonna. I mean, I know there's not one scheduled right now, but I assume that Disney will make more of them, and that's like a very similar shtick. And so I think I'm on board for this world to like sort of have these more standalone type stories just given within this Pokemon world, and that the Pokemon are more the franchise than the actors or the actresses, and there's just like self-contained stories. I don't know what they're going to do with it. I think it's going to be a really interesting thing because God knows there sure is a lot of different stories they could tell in this world that already are, whether it's the various different like original style games or all the spin-offs. There was like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, there was Pokemon Snap, there was Pokemon Ranger, Pokemon Stadium. There's so much here for them to do that it really, and I'm just like completely pretty much on board as long as they can make like, as long as like the movies are like at this level to better, like I'm on board. I'm sold. Like it's I'm a very easy person to please here. I feel like so. Yeah, I'm just stoked that this exists and that it is good and I love it. And thank you for letting me chatter about it for an hour here or 45 minutes here, and that rules.
Yeah, of course. I know we were texting back and forth, and I was like, have you seen it yet? Have you seen it yet? And, you had some other stuff going on because I went into it and I was like, okay, I know Mitchell and I are going to be talking about this. So
Mhm.
I was like, is Mitchell going to like this? Because I had fun with it, but I ultimately gave it, I believe, a 3 out of 5, which
Hmm.
I probably would bump that up a little on a second
Eh,
viewing just because I think it really does accomplish what it wants to accomplish and it doesn't need to do anything more than that. And you gave it, I believe, a 4.5 out of 5, if I'm not mistaken,
yeah, yeah.
which is fine. I love that. I love that you really just dived into this movie and enjoyed it. And it makes for an interesting conversation because, not every movie is one that you and I necessarily agree on. So we have, quite a few text conversations where, we either really disagree on a movie or we're like pretty much feeling the same on it.
Yeah. Like again, this is something that I pretty much seeing the first trailer that came up for it, I was like, what the heck? But then like in time, seeing the trailers more and more, I was just like, oh fuck, I am so on board with this. Like, it's something I can't really analyze critically. It's something that I have just complete like naked bias for is this franchise and this sort of thing. So I just it makes me so happy, and I'm so stoked to finally be able to see it. And I'm very biased and I can't really analyze it critically. I can just tell you what I love about it, which I think is fine. I don't think I can fault people for giving it like ratings like you gave it, because I think it is it's something you're either in or you're out on, I feel like. And I feel like you could see it. Like, I know there were people that saw like the trailers or like the ads for it and be like, that looks horrible. Like, what the heck are they doing? Like, what is this? I totally get it. That you could like not be on board with it, because it's very much like a world and a set of rules and like all these things that if you aren't familiar with are gonna be fairly impenetrable, because there's a lot of just weird stuff. There's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Pokemon, and they've been making these games for like 2 decades, and it's like it's so much. And but as somebody who has grown up with those things, I really it feels like when people like back when they first were making like a lot of like the superhero or like the big like nerdy properties into movies, like that feeling of, oh my gosh, this thing is on the screen and I am completely on board with it, and like this is the thing for me. And like whether it was like when they were making like the first superhero movies back in like the 90s early 2000s, or like Star Wars when they brought Star Wars back, like how people like reacted to a lot of those franchises and stuff. I feel like this is that, but like for me, because I grew up with this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally think it's fair if people are like, what the heck's going on here? I follow a lot of people on like Letterboxd or on Film Twitter that are just like, this isn't what, and I'm like, that's fair, but this is my movie made for me. So
yeah, I'm all for differing opinions on movies. I think that is perfectly healthy and fine and great when people can, agree to disagree. And I think that's the case with this. I haven't seen people being like, oh, you suck for liking this movie or anything like that. So, it's kind of refreshing because it's the internet. But I will link to that blank check episode you mentioned. I already downloaded it while we were sitting here talking. So I have lots to listen to. And, we were debating also talking about Carly Rae Jepsen for a bit, but I have not had time to give the full album a listen just yet. So we are going to have to hold off on that, unfortunately, but also just go listen to that.
Yeah, definitely go check that out. I don't know when this is going to come out. Hopefully soon, so we can capitalize on people watching and still having Detective Pikachu on the mind, because movies there's going to, again, like there's already John Wick coming out this week. Something comes out next week. It's also really big. And then it's like, the Aladdin.
Yeah.
The Aladdin.
I don't know how I feel about that yet.
Yeah.
That's another story.
Yeah. Aladdin, I think I'm going to see it just because Aladdin was like one of my favorite, like of that era Disney movies. And I saw Dumbo and it was bad. It was very bad.
I did not see Dumbo.
But like, yeah, we're getting a lot of these Disney live action remakes over the next couple of years. So
basically just go see some movies over the next few months, and there is guaranteed to be something you will enjoy.
Yeah. Oh, also I recommend John Wick, and also Booksmart I saw, which is so good and so funny.
Awesome. Yeah, I have plans to go see that too. There's quite a few things I still want to see right now that are out. So, like I said, my AMC A-list will be getting lots of use. But Mitchell, thank you so much for coming on to chat about Detective Pikachu. We probably could have gone longer if we like really dived into every little detail, but
No, I think this is perfect.
I'm sure whenever the next Pokemon movie comes out, you'll be first call I make to have you on.
Oh, you better believe it. Let's hit it.
Awesome. To our listeners, you can follow us at Geekdom Pod on Twitter. Welcome to Geekdom on Instagram and Facebook. And as always, thank you all for listening, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah.